If you get pulled over for a DUI in Pennsylvania, what do you think the most dangerous part is? The breath test? The field sobriety test? Nah, neither one of them. It's the casual conversation you have with the officer, thinking that you're just talking your way out of it, or the officer's just being friendly. All they're doing is just getting additional information from you, whether it be from how you're talking, how you're smelling while you're talking, how your eyes are dilated while you're talking. All this information they're going to use against you to validate the arrest for a DUI conviction. Hi, I'm Frank Walker. I'm a criminal defense and DUI attorney right here in Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and all the Southwestern counties. I've handled tons of DUI cases, and it never fails that some of the DUI cases turn on a couple sentences that the defendant makes that they don't even think matters in the long run, but it does when you couple it with other facts all put together. It's the totality of everything that happens during that stop that really leads them into trouble. So in this video, I'm going to walk through the 5 trick questions that the officers ask during a DUI stop and what they're really trying to lock into, what they're really trying to uncover, and how you can respond to them without seeming combative, argumentative, and really get through the DUI stop. Because again, the number one goal for every DUI stop or every police interaction on the side of the road is to get home. You always want to get home, contact an attorney, you can fight about it later. You're not going to win that DUI fight in an argument on the side of the road. Just not going to happen. Because what you say on the side of the road with that officer, you can't take it back. And everything you say on that side of the road could be the difference between you getting a ride home from your family members that night, or you sitting in a jail cell while your license and your criminal record could be at stake moving forward. The first trick question that officers typically use in DUI stops is, have you had anything to drink tonight? It seems like a harmless question, but they're asking that question immediately when they come up to the window. You roll the window down and they're asking you a question, have you had anything to drink tonight? Now, I would say 95% of my clients in DUI cases, they say the same thing. I've had 2 beers, officer, or I had a glass of wine, officer. That one statement now leads them into legal justification so they can pull you out of the car and start asking you to perform field sobriety tests, and also gives them a heightened level of scrutiny when it comes to, well, wait a minute, what else is going on here? Usually what the officer is going to observe is the slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, and odor of alcohol emanating from the person, whether it's mild, whether it's heavy, whether it's low. They're going to say they smell some type of alcohol. They're going to order you out of the car, and they're going to ask you to perform field sobriety tests. I have one client, her name is Hannah. Officer came up and stopped her at a DUI stop. She rolled down the window, started talking immediately. Hey, officer, why'd you pull me over? What's going on? Now, while you're talking, your breath is going towards the officer while the window is down. So the officer's going to smell whatever's on your breath. As she is talking, the officer says, have you had anything to drink tonight? Of course. What does she say? Oh, I was just downtown Pittsburgh and I had a glass of wine. Now the officer has a heightened sense of suspicion that something else may be going on here. So they order Hannah out the car, and all turned on her statement earlier that she had 1 glass of wine to drink in Pittsburgh that night after a show she went to. Now, the issue is, had she not said anything at all, or had she declined to answer any questions, it would have been fine. It could have been fine. But when we're trying to move forward with trial and the evidence comes out, guess what was the key information to be used against Hannah? Officer had a glass of wine to drink in Pittsburgh after a show that night. That was a key piece of information. So instead of going to trial, or instead of filing any pretrial motions, we had to negotiate a plea. Because why? She opened her mouth and started talking. As opposed to Graceland, who was in a situation, one of my clients. Graceland, instead of responding to the officer, said, you know what? I respectfully decline to answer any questions. Because you're not required to answer any questions. If they're asking where you're coming from, where you're going, I respectfully decline to answer any questions, ma'am or sir. Be very polite, but be very firm and be very clear, because that can be the difference between whether or not there was a legal justification to continue on with the field sobriety test, or whether or not they had no information or no evidence whatsoever and everything became unlawful at that point. But the moment you open your mouth and start talking and offering information, it goes all downhill from there. Because in Pennsylvania, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to answer any questions, and you do not have to incriminate yourself. Second trick question that officers often ask during a DUI stop is, where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Now, it sounds like a harmless question. They're just having conversation with you, but they're also gathering information and gathering evidence, because the officer's job is to gather evidence against you, to use against you in support of the criminal charges they're going to file against you, namely a DUI. There was a client of mine one time, Hassani. Hassani was being stopped right outside of Bethel Park. He was driving, and the officer asked, where are you coming from? And he said, oh, I was coming from my girlfriend's house. Well, later on, the officer followed up, called Hassani's girlfriend. What Hassani's girlfriend said, yeah, he was here tonight, but he left some time ago. I don't know when. It's like a red flag, because now the officer's thinking, wait a minute, I'm now more suspicious because you told me you were just coming from there. She's saying you left a little bit earlier. which one is it? I don't know which one it is. It seems like a minor inconsistency, but when someone's suspected of having a DUI, they want to know where you're coming from. Really what they want to know is, are you coming from a bar? Are you coming from a party? Are you coming from some establishment where they serve alcohol? Because if so, that poses another red flag, because why? If there's alcohol being served there and you were just there and you're coming from there, odds are you were imbibing or you were engaging in consuming alcohol. Therefore, my suspicions are heightened because I think if you're coming from an establishment where they're serving alcohol, it's possibility or more probable than not that you were consuming alcohol. And if I smell alcohol emanating from your person, if I see that you have bloodshot eyes, and I also see that you have kind of like you're nervous or unsteady gait, now my suspicions are heightened. I'm going to think that you may be driving under the influence, all because you answer questions. The simple response to that is, hey, I would prefer not to answer that question, sir or ma'am. Be very polite. It's not being combative. It's not being a smart mouth. It's very smart. It's intelligent on your part, because you're not going to give them more information to support a case against you, especially for a DUI at 2 a.m. on the side of the road. Don't help them hurt you. Yet another trick question that officers use when they pull you over is, do you know why I pulled you over? Now think about that for a second. The officer who's in a police car, lights on top, has lit up the lights to pull you over. You know when you see lights, you're required to pull over. So they're walking to the car, and the first thing they ask you is, do you know why I pulled you over? What type of question is that? You pulled me over. Why are you asking me? Because you want me to incriminate myself. It is an effort to get you to tell them information about yourself. Because if you say something like, oh, there was a stop sign back there, I didn't see it, guess how that gets written up in the report? They admitted to running the stop sign. Or, I was going too fast, I admit, I was stupid. Because now you're admitting to things, and odds are in your mind you're thinking, if I admit to something small, maybe they won't arrest me for anything bigger. Or maybe they won't notice that I'm intoxicated. Or maybe they won't notice that I have expired registration. Or maybe they don't notice that the car isn't mine. Who knows? I don't know what you're thinking. But odds are you're trying to downplay what they could possibly be investigating you for. So the moment you start admitting things, it's a heightened sense of scrutiny against you and suspicion. Because now they think, oh, wait a minute, they've already admitted to speeding, running a stop sign, driving out a license, and no registration. What else is going on should I uncover right here? Now, all of a sudden, they have a justification to pull you over, because whatever they thought they were going to pull you over for, since you admitted it, they don't have to prove it anymore, because they need a legal justification to pull you over and stop you. They can't just pull you over and say, after the fact, I pulled them over because they admitted to speeding. No, they need that legal justification before pulling you over and requiring you to pull over and stop. So the moment they ask you the question, they're trying to get evidence against you so they can justify their stop. Is it right? No. Do they do it? Absolutely. So how do you respond to that trick question? You don't. No, officer, I don't know why you pulled me over. And stay silent. Don't be nervous. Remain calm. Don't start chatterboxing and just talking all over the place. Just remain silent. Let them do their job. Don't help them hurt you. Another question that officers use to trick you when they pull you over for a DUI stop. Would you mind taking some tests for me? Would you mind stepping out and taking some field sobriety tests for me? Here's a hint. These tests are entirely voluntary. You don't have to take the test. You're not required to take the test. Those tests, like the walk and turn, the one-legged stand, following the pen with your eyes, or following their finger with your eyes. First of all, they couldn't do it themselves. If you asked them to do it, they couldn't do it themselves. I've been to many of these seminars, and cops and officers, retired officers who are now investigators, who are now attorneys, or who are now prosecutors, they come to these events and they admit it, even just to that crowd alone, that they know they couldn't do those tests themselves, because they are designed for you to fail. It's not going to be, oh, you got an 80% or you got a 90%. It's going to be a pass-fail. It's not going to be, oh, you got a 9 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. It's going to be a pass-fail. I had one client, Joey, up in North Hills. He got arrested for a DUI, and while he's doing the field sobriety test, it was raining, it was on a hill, it was at night, it was dark, obviously, and it was kind of foggy. And he had a knee operation in the past because he was playing ball. But he had, sore knees. He would try to get a knee replacement, which he never did, but that's a whole nother story. He was asked to do the field sobriety test. He didn't inform them of the knee. And also, they didn't inform him that he didn't have to do the test. He thought he was required to do the test. He slipped on the bad knee and fell. What did they write it up as? Oh, he failed. He failed the test. Not because he's intoxicated, but that's how they wrote it down, but because it was at night, he had a bad knee, it was on a hill, it was on a slant, and he had bad shoes on. But because they wrote it up as a fail, pass-fail, no one questioned it until I got on the case. I started asking for the discovery, asking for the body body cam and the dash cam, I see all the information. I asked the officer, did you inquire about any injuries he had in the past? Did you inquire whether or not he had firm standing on the ground? Did you look to see whether or not it was on a hill, whether it was a flat plane? You had no idea. You didn't ask any questions because you wanted him to fail. Isn't that correct? Of course, they had to admit it, and later on the charges got dismissed. Now, in that situation, had the officer told my client not to perform the test, he probably wouldn't have performed them. So it's up to you to respectfully but firmly decline to answer any questions and decline to perform any field sobriety tests because they're only using the evidence to hurt you. Again, say it with me. Don't help them, hurt you. Now, the final trick question that the officers will ask you during a DUI stop is, would you mind blowing into this breathalyzer? Now, in Pennsylvania, it's called a preliminary breath test, a PBT. It's a small device that you blow into on the side of the road. It is optional. Now, I get it. There's other penalties that may come with it later on, but we'll talk about later on in the video. But for now, the PBT is optional. You don't want to give them more information to use against you because sometimes it's not accurate, sometimes it's not calibrated, and sometimes the results can widely vary. You may have a 0.09, and you're just a little bit over the limit, but because that PBT came back a 0.09, now that gives them more information to arrest you for suspicion of a DUI, take you back to the station, and give you the official breath or the official blood test, because before that, they'll read you this DL26. But many people won't take the PBT because they're wildly inaccurate, but they can justify the officer arresting you, taking you back to the station to perform the chemical test or the blood test. I have one client named Shawnee. Shawnee was on the south side. She's in Pittsburgh on the south side. She's driving. She gets pulled over for suspicion of DUI. Whatever the legal justification was, the officer came up and asked her to do the PBT. After the field sobriety test, asked her to blow into the PBT. She blew a 0.09. When she got back to the station, did a chemical test and the blood test, the official test, she came in below the limit. But because they had that evidence earlier against her, they still charged her with the DUI. It is entirely inaccurate. You can choose to refuse the PBT. Again, that is the PBT, the initial breath test. Now, when you get back to the station, they'll read you what they call the warnings, the DL26 warnings, which is the implied consent in Pennsylvania. Because if you get your license, you're implying that you consent to any breath or blood test if you get pulled over for suspicion of the DUI. Once they read you that warning, you have a certain amount of time for which you can comply with the blood or breath test. If you do not, they can suspend your license for up to a year, and that is a mandatory suspension. So if you refuse that at the station, they can suspend your license. However, refusing the PBT, the first test at the scene, is entirely optional. It is up to you. While you're at the scene for a DUI stop, you can politely say to the officer, I do not wish to blow into the PBT, and that's it. That's all you have to say. If later on they require you to do the chemical test or the blood test, then you can make the decision at that time whether or not you wish to do that. Because if you do not, you will lose your license for up to a year. I know Pennsylvania is different, but the PBT at the scene, you can politely decline that, and that's what you should do. So let's recap the 5 trick questions that officers will pose to you when they pull you over for a DUI stop. Number 1, have you had anything to drink tonight? Number 2, where are you coming from or where are you going? Number 3, do you know why I pulled you over? Number 4, would you mind performing these field sobriety tests? 5, and finally, would you mind blowing into this PBT? These are the 5 trick questions that officers will pose to you in support of an arrest for a DUI against you in the criminal complaint that they will file against you in Pennsylvania. You have rights. It is up to you to assert those rights. You can be calm, you can be firm, and you can be clear. But don't be combative. Don't be yelling, I have rights. I watched Frank Walker's video. Please don't say that because I don't want them coming after me. Just be polite, be firm, be clear. I wish to decline these tests. I wish not to come out. I wish not to speak with you any further until I speak with my lawyer. Assert your rights. Do it calm, do it clear, but do it firmly. And that way you can protect yourself and not help them hurt you in the long run. And if you are facing charges for a DUI in Pennsylvania, don't do it alone. Contact a criminal defense attorney. That is what we do. And legal advice early on in your DUI case can change everything. Now, before you go, there's one more video you need to watch, and that is what to do if you find out there's a warrant for your arrest. That can give you valuable information if you find out there's a warrant for your arrest or warrant for the arrest of one of your friends or family members. I encourage you to watch that, and if this video has helped you out in any way, shape, or form, if you've got some valuable information, please like, share, subscribe, and send it to a friend, because sometimes it may not be you that needs the information. It may be someone else that needs the information, and that's why you should share this video with them. So watch the next video now. Warrant for your arrest, what you need to do to stay out of jail now. See you over there.